Mm. All right. How Abaddon starved the Imperial war machine. Boy, Abaddon is a reoccurring nightmare. He's not even a Primarch from what I understand. He's just a standard Astartes.
It is the tail end of the 37th millennium. Abaddon, Warmaster of Chaos, launches his 8th Black Crusade. His previous campaigns had been resounding successes. His goals had all been met. Great rivals had been crushed, irreplaceable Necron pylons destroyed, and key worlds weakened. His forces had scattered the Imperium's fleets and torn down bastion after bastion. The galaxy was reeling from the weight of his victories. Yet a warlord's work is never done. The anathema still sat upon his golden throne, his endless, lifeless gaze fixed upon the stars. Abaddon would not rest so long as the corpse emperor remained untoppled. And nor should you rest until you're done writing that story you've been mulling over. And for that, we bring you a special offer from our sponsor, World.
There's a new canon and lore that they brought out, which says something about the Grey Knights. I believe it's the Grey Knights serve to keep the Emperor on the golden throne. So should he ever resurrect, their job is to shove his ass right back there by order of his previous self. So any resurrection would be a new Emperor, not the same guy. Which is interesting because I would find that weird that if he did come back, like, what would it change?
Anvil. World Anvil is a complete package for building creative fiction.
Personally, I think Games Workshop is dragging this out too long. They really need to advance the story. All of this is like, Emperor sit on throne, Emperor eat thousands of psychers daily. That's it. And instead of bringing him back, they're like, Grey Knights, the secret act that we've been keeping a secret for so long is in fact keeping him there, keeping him on the big old golden chair.
Fiction projects, be it a novel, lore for a particular setting, or the many ins and outs of a tabletop adventure game. It's novel writing software, publishing software, database software, mapping software. It's the world you want to create software. Link your prose to a massive wiki-like encyclopedia of lore with locations, history, characters, items, all interconnected by World Anvil, not only to help you write, but to allow collaborators or admiring fans to come in and see the details of your world for themselves. Their manuscript creation process is quick to learn and extremely powerful. Never forget a detail and speed up the process to focus on the juicy parts of creativity. It's especially good if you want to write a scenario for tabletop gaming, as World Anvil supports all kinds of game system rules internally to run a campaign virtually and show players the details of the world they're in. We haven't even mentioned most of the tools World Anvil gives you, so check it all out at our link in the description. And as a bonus, if you use our code WIZARDS on their site, you'll get a full 51% off a yearly subscription to World Anvil. Use that and get started today.
A lot of mad customization websites.
Crimes Abaddon had unleashed upon
I don't mind them, they're perfect for tabletop.
Chaos had striven to ensure the favor of the Dark Pantheon. The blood god, Khorne, was well pleased with the carnage and slaughter accrued over the millennia. The jovial grandfather Nurgle had laughed heartily at the cursing of Corona during the Second Black Crusade. Even fickle Slaanesh had been won over, seduced by the screams of the Valacian population as their bodies were torn asunder by perverse indulgences. But there was one god who remained distant, Tzeentch, the Changer of Ways. By far the most inscrutable and enigmatic of the Chaos gods, his favor was hard to gain and even easier to lose.
Honestly, based on what I know, Nurgle is the most powerful of the Chaos gods. He's the most known, I'll say that much, because his name's just so cool, Nurgle.
His schemes stretched across the web of time, and the complexity of his will was a puzzle that even Abaddon's greatest minds could not easily decipher. Yet the time had come for the Warmaster to make his bid. With the Great Four at his side and Draknien in his hand, nothing in the Imperium would stand in his way. Abaddon's soothsayers and warp scryers were put to work. These were not the petty cultists and lesser acolytes that whispered on the edges of reality, but powerful Astartes sorcerers, leaders in their own right, feared and respected by all who knew them. Yet even they were not prepared for what lay ahead. Many were lost in the attempt to divine the will of Tzeentch. Those who dared peer too deeply into the warp were snuffed out like candles in the wind. The
Sounds
chaos
like
of the
he's a
immaterial
little
shattered
cranky for a
even their
chaos god.
transhuman minds, leaving them broken, trapped in endless cycles of incomprehensible visions. Their warp senses brushed against the infinite designs of the Changer of Ways, and the price was more than they could pay. Their minds could no longer distinguish between the past, present, and future. Every moment became a labyrinth, every choice an enigma without a solution. For every sorcerer who fell, another took their place, but even Abaddon's greatest psychers struggled to understand. Yet, despite the agony, a pattern began to emerge. A sequence, both numerical and esoteric, its repetition fainter than the ticking of a clock. These numbers held the key to the War Master's victory. The Wheel of Tzeentch was revealed as clearly as it ever could be. The Eighth Black Crusade was not to be a campaign of conquest. Tzeentch was not interested in the usual promises of blood and territory. This time, death would spread across the Imperium in a fractal bloom, an intricate and purposeful killing pattern that only the Changer of Ways could understand. The Eighth Black Crusade would not strike with the ferocity of a maddened Ambul,
We went
nor
from
with the
10th to
cruel
8th,
precision of a homunculus.
back in time.
It would fall upon the Imperium seemingly at random, without warning, and with no clear purpose beyond the execution of the numbers that had been revealed. Abaddon's forces struck across Segmentum Obscurus, attacking isolated settlements, orbital relay moons, pilgrim convoys, and forge worlds. The scale of the crusade was immense, but the logic behind the attacks was incomprehensible to Imperial minds. At first, there was no obvious pattern, no connection between the disparate targets. Unlike the previous crusades, where Abaddon had struck with ruthless efficiency and overwhelming force, this was different. The Black Legion did not follow through with their attacks. Key strategic positions were assaulted, only for the heretics to withdraw at the last moment, just before their enemies were shattered. Imperial forces, certain of their doom, reported inexplicable restraint from the Chaos forces. Garrisons prepared for the final battle, only for the Black Legion to retreat, leaving their would-be victims confused and uncertain of the true purpose of this campaign.
That
But
would
the story
confuse the
was
hell
more
out of some people.
complex. While strategic positions were left untouched, other targets were savaged with genocidal thoroughness. Remote colonies, unimportant outposts, and small settlements were annihilated with brutal precision.
So is Abaddon's
their
goal?
populations wiped out.
Is his goal to be similar to Horus and have 4 chaos gods inside of him?
In numbers that seemed arbitrary. A distant agricultural world might be spared, while a humble manufactorum was drowned in blood. In the eyes of Tzeentch, strategy was meaningless. The only thing that mattered was the sequence. The numbers were sacred, and every death had its place. The Imperial response was one of confusion and fear. The Emperor's most holy Inquisition began to mobilize, but they could not begin to guess where to start their investigation. In their panic, they spread themselves thin across every theater of the conflict, desperate to uncover the meaning behind these random slaughters. Abaddon had outfoxed them. Every attempt to strike back only seemed to bring more death, and yet the true purpose behind the killings remained elusive. The moons of Tychus were the first to bleed. In the grand scheme of things, these settlements were insignificant. They had endured the horrors of the Old Night and the Horus Heresy simply owing to their lack of strategic value. The 20 crater cities that scarred their frozen surface had survived for millennia, unnoticed and untouched. But on the day that Tzeentch's will was fulfilled, 8 of them were torn open, their domes shattered and their atmospheres sucked into the void. The inhabitants were left to freeze mid-breath. The other 12 remained untouched, save for the cryptic symbols carved into their outer shells, visible even from orbit. A strange and foreboding message was being sent, one that none would understand until it was too late. It was here on Tychus that the first steps of the ritual were realized. Each crater city had been a node that, when combined with the others, would complete a sequence, a cosmic equation that could only be understood by Tzeentch. And so it was with each slaughter, each death, the greater pattern began to unfold. The Black Legion's forces moved like clockwork, cutting down the faithful and the innocents, leaving behind a trail of horror that made no sense to those who had not seen the primordial truth. Among the many victims of the Black Legion was the Divine Path, a pilgrim vessel bound for Holy Terror, carrying thousands of devout souls. Like millions of similar ships, the Divine Path had begun its journey decades before. Through the years, one generation of pilgrims replaced the other, only to be replaced in turn. From father to son, the burden was carried on, marked by the pilgrim tokens
Sheesh,
the parents
that's a
would
slow
pass
travel.
on to their children. They toiled and crewed their metal coffin with zeal, hoping that through their sacrifice, their offspring may one day gaze upon the throne world. For reasons barely known even to him, Tzeentch had marked this unremarkable vessel for slaughter. From its hull to its hab chapel, 999 of its passengers were ritually slain, in ascending order of the pilgrim tokens they wore. The rest were spared, left to mourn and to wonder why the wrath of chaos had fallen so mercilessly on such an unimportant vessel.
Tzeentch? I thought he hadn't contacted Abaddon. So he did, and now Abaddon's carrying out his will? Alright.
There was no why. There was only the number. As the bodies piled up and the galaxy reeled, the Ordo Malleus deployed Cypher Savant teams to analyze the growing number of killings. Dozens of Lex mechanics burned out their cortex implants trying to solve the mystery, but the truth was elusive. It took time, but the pattern was finally uncovered, a grand equation not composed of numbers but of corpses. The Skullgather, as historians would later name the Eighth Black Crusade, was not a campaign, it was a ritual designed to appease the Changer of Ways. The final stroke of the Skullgather came on the forge world of Rithkarn, a place once bustling with industry and innovation. But the world had long been in decay, its underclasses oppressed and abused. It was here, among the mutant workers who served in the manufactorums, that chaos truly began. Whispered words and
Surprise chaos didn't begin sooner.
Inspired a great uprising, and soon the dregs of Rithkarn had turned their tools against the tech priests who had long ruled over them. Abaddon's forces arrived to find the world already in turmoil. The Black Legion had not come to claim the vast industries of the Forge world. They had come to complete them. The High Council of Tech Magi, the architects of Rithkarn's great machines, were captured and sacrificed upon the anvil of their own creation. Their bodies were torn apart and fed into the gears they had served for centuries. Blood became lubricant, screams became the hymns of the Forge. In the molten heart of Rithkarn, the final piece of the ritual fell into place, and the grand equation was completed. With that final sacrifice, the construct nodes beneath Tychus ignited with warp fire. The forbidden structures that had been buried since the long night melted and twisted in shapes that defied all reason. The veil thinned, and Tzeentch was pleased. His ever-changing will had been fulfilled. For now. By the time the Inquisition identified the pattern, it was already too late. The Crusade had ended. Abaddon had withdrawn. There were no victors, no spoils, only silence and the sickening stench of death. The Imperium was left to pick up the pieces, but they would never fully understand what had just transpired. Abaddon had sought the favor of Tzeentch, and in doing so, had unleashed a ritual so complex, so terrifying, that even the most learned minds could only tremble at the thought. The Eighth Black Crusade had culminated in yet another resounding victory for the War Master, solidifying his dominance. But
You can't call him dominance, because yes, he's achieving the goal he sets out each time for the Crusade, but he's still retreating and falling back. He's a bandit. Just comes in, does some stuff, and leaves.
even as the echoes of his triumph reverberated across the galaxy, Abaddon knew that the war was far from over. Half a millennium later, he would rise again, ready to unleash a new and even more devastating assault upon the Imperium. The Ninth Black Crusade, or the Starving of Cancephalus, marked a pivotal moment in Abaddon the Despoiler's relentless war against the Imperium. Launched in 537 M38 from the Eye of Terror, the Crusade sought to cripple one of the most vital Imperial Navy strongholds in the sector, the shipyards of Cancephalus. Abaddon's plan was deceptively simple, yet devastating in its execution. Recognizing that the shipyards relied heavily on the labor force of the nearby hive world of Anticanas IV, he decided to strike at the heart of this vital supply chain. By cutting off the labor, the Imperium's war machine would be stifled, and Cancephalus would fall silent. The assault on Anticanis would serve as a prelude to the broader devastation that was to come. The Anticanis massacre began with the swift arrival of Abaddon's Black Legion forces, supported by numerous Chaos allies. Abaddon made pacts with the World Eaters, the Word Bearers, the Purge, and the Apostles of Minth Ras, all of whom joined in the brutal onslaught.
Word
His
bearers
battle barges and
refuse
grand
to go
cruisers
away.
decimated the orbital defenses of Anti-Canis, allowing for a bombardment of fusion bombs and vortex torpedoes that obliterated the planet's surface. Chaos Space Marines, brutal and relentless, descended upon the dying world, sweeping through the remains of the hives in a blood-drenched rampage. At the forefront of the assault was the demon prince Daleth, who spearheaded the attack on Manarchiv, the Imperial Governor's seat. For 16 days, Daleth and his demonic hordes ravaged the lower levels of the hive, slaughtering millions of refugees as they fled. The surviving inhabitants were captured and enslaved, herded back to the ships that would carry them away to an unknown fate. The Imperial response came swiftly, but not quickly enough. Astropaths broadcasted warnings.
I mean, the
to
moment the
Imperial,
aerial bombardments
the Silver
hit,
Skulls chapter of the Space
I think that's
Marines
pretty much
answered
it.
first, launching a series of hit-and-run attacks that sought to delay the Chaos forces. Yet Abaddon was a master of timing. He knew that the incoming Imperial reinforcements would spell the end of the massacre if they were not swiftly concluded, and he had no plans to meet them in person. Thus, the War Master led the final assault on Manarchiv himself, accompanied by his Black Legion Terminators. They tore through the defenders with brutal efficiency, massacring the Adeptus Arbites and the Planetary Defense Forces in a 2-day bloodbath. With the capital under his control, Abaddon had his forces kill or capture as many of the planet's population as possible, leaving only devastation in their wake. The old and the sick were put to the sword, while the rest were packed into slave ships bound for the Eye of Terror. As Imperial Guard regiments began to arrive in orbit, Abaddon's forces made their departure, slipping past the Imperial fleet and leaving chaos in their wake. The War Master did not bother to inform his allies about his redeployment. They were left stranded upon the world to bog down the Loyalists. With the bulk of the Imperial forces occupied on Anti-Canis, the despoiler would be free to strike at Cancephalus. The Imperial forces that arrived to retake Anti-Canis found themselves embroiled in a grim war of attrition with Abaddon's unwilling rearguard. The stranded heretics fought with a ferocity and desperation fueled by Abaddon's betrayal. The Imperial Guard regiments, reinforced by elements of the Adeptus Astartes, attempted to rally against the Chaos forces left behind.
Why am I not
to delay their
surprised?
pursuit.
Chaos
However, the
abandoned
planet
chaos.
was already an inferno of devastation, its infrastructure shattered beyond repair. The planet's hives lay in ruin, its once thriving cities now charred skeletons, and the surviving population was reduced to little more than broken survivors or enslaved captives. Despite the Imperial forces' relentless efforts to reclaim Anti-Canis, the world was beyond saving. Its once vibrant ecosystems turned to barren wastelands, its people scattered or dead. Worse still, the Imperial Navy shipyards at Cancephalus, the lifeblood of the sector's naval defense, were rendered completely crippled. Starved of manpower thanks to Abaddon's deliberate strike at Anti-Canis, these vital shipyards lay dormant. They remained unable to repair or resupply the Imperial fleet. The loss of such a crucial resupply station crippled the Imperium's naval operations in the region, leaving the Imperium exposed to further Chaos incursions. With no immediate means of reinforcing or
I'm curious if Gilliman's back at this point, acting as regent, because it's just weird to me how split up all the Primarch's different forces are. I mean, there's many different groups of Astartes, and they're all just acting in their own way, not as a cohesive unit. It's just so highly split up. And by the time reinforcements arrive, it's already too late. Every single time. Abaddon understands this, and he's been taking advantage of it.
resupplying, the Imperial Navy was left helpless, unable to respond to the growing threat of Chaos fleets emerging from the Eye of Terror. For the next 17 years, Abaddon's forces were free to wreak havoc across the sector, unchallenged and unopposed. His fleets, having evaded any meaningful resistance, raided Imperial outposts, destroyed supply lines, and ravaged the region at will. Whole systems fell under the sway of chaos as the Imperium struggled to recover from the crippling blow dealt by the Ninth Black Crusade. Throughout this period, the Imperium's attention was divided and resources stretched thin, unable to focus on the Eye of Terror's expanding reach. Abaddon's unrelenting campaign sowed discord and fear, his name whispered with terror
Such a
across
colorful
countless
universe.
worlds that now lay in the shadow of chaos. The devastation of Anti-Canis and Cancephalus was not merely a military loss, it was a symbol of the fragile nature of imperial power, a stark reminder of how easily the Emperor's domains could be torn apart by the forces of chaos. The tally of the Ninth Black Crusade was grim. Billions had perished, including the brave Adeptus Astartes chapter of the Celestial Swords. The Lamentus chapter, spawned from the gene seed of Sanguinius, was also all but destroyed. They were saved only by the intervention of the Ultramarines and White Scars, who came to the rescue of their unfortunate cousins. Anticanis, reduced to a ruinous wasteland, would never recover from the horrors inflicted upon it, and the shipyards of Cancephalus would be rendered inoperable. The Ninth Black Crusade, though a savage blow to the Imperium, was but another chapter in the ongoing war between Chaos and the Emperor's realm. While Abaddon's forces had dealt a devastating blow, the Imperium's resolve remained unbroken, and the seeds of resistance were sown in the wake of such catastrophic losses. The Imperium, though wounded, would not forget the horrors of Cancephalus or the blood-soaked massacre of Anticanis. In time, new champions would rise to face the Warmaster once more, setting the stage for future conflicts that would continue to shape the fate of the galaxy. Yet for now, the Ninth Black Crusade stood as a testament to Abaddon's unyielding determination to dismantle the Imperium one world at a time. We will continue to cover Abaddon's gruesome exploits as this series goes on, so make sure you have subscribed.
Good God, more than gruesome. This guy is
Please consider liking and sharing as
relentless.
it helps immensely, and don't forget to
I always feel like he fails though, because he's not really,
as we want to know what you think about this
devastating.
video and which videos you hope to see in the future.
Abaddon's
This is the
Abaddon.
Resident Warriors channel, and we'll catch
He's
you
doing a
on the
better job
next
than
one.
Horus did.
Hey there everyone, if you enjoyed this content, like and subscribe, and comment down below. Thanks again.